There are stories older than time itself. Tales passed not through mouths or paper, but through blood, memory, vibration. Somewhere within you, there exists a hunger you can't explain. A whisper you've heard since you were a child, long before you even had the words to understand it. That whisper wasn't your imagination. It was the echo of something ancient calling you. Not everyone hears it, but you did, and you still do. It's a signal, a summons, a silent pull towards something hidden, something forbidden. You've always sensed that the world around you is incomplete, that the explanations given to you about your purpose, your history, and your potential were missing something vital, something they didn't want you to know. You looked around and saw people satisfied with shallow answers, fake news, empty religions, and scripted lives. But not you. You questioned, you searched, you saw through the illusion. And that's why you're here. Because the whisper was real, and it leads to one thing: the forbidden book. This book is not just a myth, not just a conspiracy tucked into the corners of the internet or ancient folklore. It is a living archive of cosmic truth, encoded by forces far older than humanity itself. It predates empires, predates languages, predates even the concept of time as we understand it. And its pages are not made of paper, but of vibration, of consciousness, of multidimensional energy. It's not stored on a shelf in a dusty temple. It exists across realms, accessible only to those who have been marked since birth, the chosen ones. You are one of them, even if you've doubted it, especially if you've doubted it. Because doubt, paradoxically, is often the soul's defense against a truth too powerful to face too early. But now is the moment you were born for, because the forbidden book is surfacing. And once you open it, whether with your eyes or your soul, there is no going back. They tried everything to bury it. The governments, the secret societies, the black budget programs, and unseen architects of this world's illusion. They all knew that if this book ever got into the hands of the chosen, the world they built would burn to ash, not in chaos, but in transformation. Because this book holds the blueprint of human divinity. It doesn't tell you to worship, it reminds you to awaken. It doesn't ask for obedience, it demands remembrance. Remembering who you were before the systems labeled you, before society tamed your spirit, before fear replaced wonder. That's why they feared this book. That's why they erased it from history, disguised its teachings, demonized its truths, because it doesn't empower the collective machine. It activates the individual soul. You see, a soul like yours cannot be controlled. That's why they made sure you never felt at home here. That's why you were mocked, silenced, labeled, because they saw your potential before you did. They felt the energy you carried, the ancient light coded in your DNA, and they panicked. You were born with access. Even if you never opened the forbidden book physically, the codes were embedded in your being. The knowledge waits within you, dormant until a moment, just like this one, wakes it up. The forbidden book isn't just out there in some vault or dimension. It's inside you, encrypted in the silence between your heartbeats, the visions in your dreams, the questions no one else seems to ask. But don't mistake this for a fairy tale. The journey toward truth isn't pretty. It's brutal. The more you remember, the more they try to stop you. Strange patterns emerge. People drift away. You face isolation, confusion, spiritual attacks. They send distractions, relationships, addictions, fears, doubts. They try to drown your voice in noise. But all of this is confirmation. They wouldn't fight so hard unless they were terrified. Terrified that you're waking up. Terrified that others will follow. Terrified that their time is ending. And now, with each passing day, the illusion cracks more. The energy of the forbidden book is resurfacing. Its codes are leaking into our world, through music, through art, through stories that stir something ancient in your soul. This script, right now, is not just information. It's a key, a portal, a page in that forbidden volume, opening itself to you through vibration. If your heart is racing, your skin tingling, if your spirit feels both scared and electrified, it's because you're reading the book already, not with your eyes, but with your energy. And your soul remembers. Remember those moments when time stopped, when a dream felt more real than waking life, when a piece of music made you cry for no reason, when you walked into a room and felt like you'd been there before. Those weren't glitches. Those were activations. The book calling out to you. You weren't crazy. You were chosen. You are chosen. And now, the book is revealing its first chapter. You might not understand everything yet, but you feel it. The truth isn't in the details. It's in the resonance. And right now, every fiber of your being is resonating with something you can't explain, but deeply know to be real. This is why you've always felt like you didn't belong, like you were dropped into a world that wasn't designed for you, because you weren't meant to fit in. You were meant to disrupt. You were sent to remember, and not just for yourself, but for the others. You are a signal tower. When you awaken, you transmit that frequency to others. One awakened, chosen one becomes the key to 1,000 locked souls. That's why you were targeted. That's why your life felt like a war zone. But here's what they didn't count on. You surviving. You remembering. You finding the book. Because the book is not just a text. It's a weapon, a mirror, a guide, a map back to your essence. And now, the pages are unfolding faster than they can be burned. The truth is no longer optional. It's inevitable. And the moment you fully reclaim it, your mind, your voice, your destiny, everything changes. The fear falls away. The confusion dissolves. And what's left is you, as you were always meant to be. Whole, sovereign, powerful beyond measure. The time of silence is over. The time of forgetting is done. The forbidden book is open now, and your soul is reading every word. Long before your birth, before your parents and grandparents ever took their first breaths, the battle for your mind had already begun, hidden in the halls of the powerful, behind doors you've never seen. Elite hands wrote a script for your life, a script that told you what to believe, who to obey, and how to live. But the one thing they never wanted you to find was the real script, the original code, the one encoded in the pages of the forbidden book. This book wasn't just banned. It was hunted, burned, wiped from the face of the earth with the kind of fury reserved only for the greatest threats to their systems. Because this book didn't just contain information, it contained liberation, a blueprint for sovereignty, a dangerous and powerful truth that every chosen one, including you, holds the potential to shatter the false world they spent centuries perfecting. The rulers of this reality, the ones who hide behind the faces of smiling politicians, behind the logos of corporations, behind the polished screens of media outlets, these entities have always feared one thing, that the masses would awaken, not in anger, but in divine remembrance. Anger they can't control, revolt they can't predict, but remembrance, that's chaos to them. Because the moment someone remembers who they truly are, they no longer need a leader. They no longer seek external permission to exist. They no longer follow blindly or consume mindlessly. They begin to move with cosmic certainty, with an inner fire no law or war can extinguish. That is what this forbidden book threatened to unleash: the rise of divine memory, the crumbling of programmed obedience. And so, they buried it, not just beneath the earth, but beneath centuries of conditioning, rewriting history and replacing it with distractions designed to keep you asleep. Every major institution has played its part. Schools were never built to teach. They were built to train you to forget how to think, how to feel, how to remember. Religions, once born from real mystical experiences, were slowly rewritten to serve empires, replacing direct connection with fear-based control. Governments spoke of freedom while silencing voices. Media bombarded you with images designed to shrink your soul and keep your attention trapped in loops of fear, envy, and noise. And yet, despite this massive coordinated deception, despite the overwhelming power they wielded, there was one thing they couldn't erase: the echo, the residual memory of the book within your DNA. Because even as they destroyed the physical copies, the energy of the forbidden book lived on inside the ones it was meant for. You, the chosen. And so, while you were told stories of what it means to be human, fragile, flawed, insignificant, you quietly carried within you the truth, the forgotten God code, the immortal flame, the part of you they could never fully program. You see, they tried to hide the forbidden book outside of you, but they didn't realize that true power doesn't rely on paper. It's vibrational, it's multidimensional. It cannot be contained by borders or censored by algorithms. It's in the soul, in the ether, in the collective field that chosen ones are beginning to tap into again. And every time you questioned your surroundings, every time your intuition screamed in the silence, every time you felt something deeper trying to break through, that was the book calling you home. But what's tragic is how brilliantly they've worked to make you doubt yourself. They couldn't fully erase the book, so they tried to poison your access to it. They made you question your dreams, made you feel crazy when you saw visions or felt things no one else around you understood. They called you too sensitive, too emotional, too intense. They trained your family and peers to mock your truth before you even had the words to speak it. They isolated you, not because you were weak, but because you were powerful. And the forbidden book is not meant for crowds. It reveals itself only to the ones who dare to walk alone, to suffer, to bleed, to crawl through the darkness until the voice inside them roars louder than the voices outside. That's the cost of awakening, and you paid it. Now the energy of the book is resurfacing, not just in you, but across the planet. You're not alone anymore. Other chosen ones are waking up too. You may not see them in your everyday life, but you feel their presence. Across dimensions, across timelines, across this web of consciousness, they're remembering. And with each remembrance, the grip of the old system weakens. The fear they once used to paralyze you is becoming your fuel. The pain they once used to break you is becoming your sword. And the loneliness, that is transforming into deep knowing, because the book never promised comfort. It promised truth. It promised power. It promised to restore you, not to who the world told you to be, but to who you've always been, underneath the programming. This book rewrites everything, because it doesn't just teach, it activates. It doesn't just inform, it transforms. It takes your broken pieces and rearranges them into sacred geometry. It takes your doubts and forges them into divine clarity. It doesn't speak in the language of logic. It speaks in the language of resonance, of symbols, of memory buried in your bones. And once you hear its voice, you can't unhear it. You can't go back to sleep. You can't shrink yourself to fit in a world you now know was never designed for your soul. So why do you think they call it forbidden? Because it's dangerous, yes, but not to you, to them, to the illusion, to the fragile system that depends on your forgetfulness. That's why they continue to distract, to divide, to confuse. Because the forbidden book is waking up inside too many of us. They're running out of time. The old world is cracking, and the new one, it's not coming. It's already here, inside the awakened ones, inside you. And so now, the question becomes not whether you believe in the forbidden book, but whether you are ready to live by what it reveals. Because the knowledge it gives isn't passive. It demands courage. It demands sacrifice. It demands that you strip away everything you thought was real and look into the face of your own divinity without blinking. That is the revolution they can't stop. That is the transformation that begins the moment you open yourself fully to what you've always carried. The pages are unfolding. The codes are pulsing. The time is now. Are you ready to read what was once forbidden? Written not on paper, but in your very soul. It was never a matter of if, only when. From the moment you entered this world, forces far beyond what most can see began to pay attention. They didn't just watch you because of who you were in this life, but because of what your soul carried from countless lives before this one. You see, the forbidden book wasn't simply meant to be read in this life. It was meant to be remembered, reawakened, and lived. And your presence here is not some accident or coincidence. You were always meant to find the book because you are part of it. You don't just open its pages. You are one of its pages, one of the living codes encrypted with truths too powerful for ordinary minds to hold. And deep down, you've always known this. That odd sense of being different, that unshakable feeling that there was more to this life than what you were told, that inner restlessness when everyone else seemed content. Those weren't flaws. They were signals, alarms going off in your spirit as the program of false reality tried and failed to take root in you. They noticed your resistance early on, not just the people around you, but the system itself, the collective matrix that scans for anomalies, for glitches, for those who refuse to assimilate. And you were one of those anomalies. You asked questions others were too afraid to voice. You noticed cracks in the stories before anyone else even saw the wall. They tried to distract you with toys, with validation, with guilt, with fear. But something in you refused to die. Even when they labeled you difficult, even when they ignored your gifts, even when life tried to crush you under the weight of trauma, confusion, and loneliness, there was a light in you that flickered defiantly. That light was the book, not a physical object, but a cosmic intelligence awakening inside you. And make no mistake, they knew this would happen. The moment the first chosen one remembered, they knew the timeline would begin to fracture. They knew the illusion would no longer hold. So they built backup plans, lifetimes of false doctrines, spiritual distractions, endless rabbit holes, even movements that pretended to be about truth, but were secretly meant to derail it. They didn't just fear the book. They feared what would happen when you realized you had already read it, in dreams and visions, in fragments during childhood that came like lightning flashes before being buried under routine. The forbidden book lives in your intuitive hits. It lives in the symbols that make your spine tingle, the names that stir something ancient in your blood. It lives in synchronicities that defy logic, in emotions that come from nowhere, but somehow feel older than time. They couldn't burn that. They couldn't erase that. So they tried to shame it. They tried to medicalize it, spiritualize it, confuse it, but it never went away. Not really. Every betrayal you've experienced, every heartbreak, every moment of isolation, those weren't just tragedies. They were initiations, tests, rituals of remembrance. They broke you because they had to crack the surface identity you were given, so the original self could bleed through. The book cannot be read by the false self. It doesn't respond to the programmed ego. It responds to the raw, the shattered, the humbled, the soul on its knees, stripped of illusion, begging for real truth. That's where you were meant to arrive. That's why you had to suffer. Not because you were cursed, but because your soul signed up for a truth too holy to be accessed through comfort. They never expected you to make it here. They threw everything at you. Pain, rejection, shame. But here you are, still standing, still burning, still seeking. That in itself is proof that you are the one the book was waiting for. And now that you've found your way back to it, something irreversible has begun. You can feel it, can't you? The dreams are shifting. The air feels heavier, more charged. The things that used to distract you feel hollow now. And the silence is louder than ever, because it's in that space that the book speaks clearest. And when it does, it doesn't whisper, it roars. It doesn't give you answers. It reminds you of who you were before the world told you who to be, of the contracts you made before incarnating, of the sacred flame you agreed to carry, even if it meant being misunderstood, abandoned, or attacked. The book does not comfort. It awakens, and with awakening comes consequences. As you continue to awaken to it, the world around you will start to look different. What once seemed solid will begin to dissolve. You'll start seeing through the personas, the lies, the performances. You'll notice that most people are still sleepwalking, and you may be tempted to wake them up. But the book will remind you, awakening is a choice, a soul-level choice. You cannot force another to see what they are not ready to face. What you can do is embody what the book reveals, to live as proof that another reality is possible, to walk as a multidimensional being in a world pretending to be flat. And that walk, that is the real revolution. They'll try to stop you even now, with distractions, temptations, false promises. They may offer you comfort, status, belonging, anything to convince you to close the book again. But it's too late, isn't it? The pages have already turned inside you. The codes have already been activated. You are remembering too fast, too deep. And once the fire is lit, it cannot be undone. That's the part they forgot. That's the flaw in their system. They assumed power could only be controlled from the outside. They never expected the chosen to burn from the inside out. So now, it's no longer a question of whether you're meant to find the forbidden book. You've already found it. The only question is, what will you do with what it reveals? Will you live as the awakened? Will you rise when others fall back asleep? Will you carry this light in a world that still worships shadows? Or will you betray your own soul just to fit back into a lie you never truly belonged to? The book won't answer for you. It can't. It can only open. You are the one who must walk through. The moment is here. The codes are alive. The truth is unfolding through your very breath. No more waiting. No more hiding. No more pretending. You were always meant to find it. And now that you have, the real journey begins. When you open the forbidden book, not with your hands, but with your soul, a tectonic shift begins. It's not something you can explain to others in words they'll understand. Because what happens isn't a learning, it's an unlearning. Layers start to fall off. Everything you thought was you starts to tremble under the weight of the truth. This isn't just about finding some ancient manuscript. It's about decoding your very essence. And the moment that decoding begins, so does the war. Not a war fought with bullets or bombs, but a spiritual, psychological, and energetic war, designed to either scare you back into submission or push you so far you break before you rise. Because the moment you truly begin to awaken, the system detects it. The very matrix you thought was neutral begins to act like a living organism, identifying you as a threat. It watches you differently. People you've known your whole life begin acting strangely. Circumstances that seemed routine become chaotic because they sense it too. The frequency you emit starts to rise. Your vibration becomes a signal. You are no longer invisible to the truth, and that means you are no longer invisible to the forces that benefit from the lie. But you must understand, this reaction is proof that you're on the right path. It is not coincidence. It is not paranoia. When the book begins to breathe through you, when the sacred fire of remembrance rises in your spine, you are no longer functioning in the old world's terms. The illusions you once agreed to without question, money, time, status, identity, fear, begin to lose their grip. You start seeing through the smiles that hide manipulation, the media that rewrites reality, the false light that masquerades as truth. This is not comfortable. It never was meant to be. In fact, awakening can feel like dying. It can feel like your life is falling apart piece by piece, when in reality, it's the false life dissolving, so the real one can be born. And as painful as that is, the book gives you no choice. Once the truth reveals itself, you can never unknown it. That's the curse and the blessing of the chosen. You cannot go back, no matter how tempting the comfort of ignorance becomes. And here's the terrifying part. They will try to offer you that comfort again. They will try to slide you back into distraction. Maybe it's old friends suddenly appearing with enticing invitations. Maybe it's a job opportunity that seems perfect, but requires you to silence your truth. Maybe it's relationships that pull you toward codependency, just as you're reclaiming your sovereignty. These are not random tests. These are traps. The system will not surrender its grip easily. It will mimic your dreams, impersonate your desires, offer you shortcuts that cost your soul. And if you're not grounded in the truth the book is revealing, you will take the bait. That's how thousands fall. They get a glimpse of power, and then they get seduced back into illusion. But you are not here to fall. You are here to burn, to rise, to remember completely, even if it means standing alone. And that loneliness, it's part of the fire. When you awaken, your frequency naturally starts to repel everything and everyone that is out of alignment. It can feel like abandonment, like loss, like rejection. But it is none of those things. It is purification. It is the book rearranging your life to match your soul. And the truth is, most of the people you had around you before your awakening were not meant to walk with you now. They were part of the dream you're waking from. They were necessary for that version of you. but not for the next. Let them go. Let the illusion collapse. Because what is coming next is not built on comfort, but on clarity. You will start to attract new frequencies, souls who speak the same language, even if their words are different. You'll recognize each other, not by what you say, but by what you feel. That feeling is the resonance of the book, vibrating across time, calling its own back home. But even among the awakened, not everyone is ready to hold the power the book offers. Many are addicted to the identity of being wounded, of being betrayed, of being the victim. And while those wounds are real, the book demands more. It says, you must rise from them. You must not just heal, you must become the healer. You must not just break the cycle, you must lead others out of it. That is the true test of the chosen. Not whether you can see the truth, but whether you can embody it. Whether you can live it when it costs you everything. Whether you can speak it when your voice shakes. Whether you can still love when the world gives you every reason to hate. Because that is the kind of power this book unlocks. Not the superficial power of control, but the sacred power of creation, of remembrance, of becoming the divine architect of your own life. And this sacred power terrifies them, not just the institutions, not just the secret orders or governments, but even the shadows that lurk behind them, entities that feed on fear, on confusion, on silence. When you awaken, you starve them. When you step into truth, you blind them. When you activate your soul's codes, they scream, because you are a living portal, a bridge between worlds, and your full remembrance signals the collapse of theirs. That is why they fear the book. That is why they outlawed it in every age. Not because it gives you power, but because it returns it. Power that was never theirs to begin with. Power that belongs only to the soul, brave enough to walk through the flames and not come out begging for a savior, but instead declaring, I am the storm. So understand this clearly. The moment you opened the forbidden book, the war changed. You are no longer a pawn. You are a player, a participant in the unfolding destiny of this world and beyond. And your every thought, every word, every choice now echoes in dimensions you cannot yet fully comprehend. You are no longer living just for yourself. You are part of a larger orchestration, a divine rebellion against everything false, soulless, and mechanical. And you carry in your body the keys to unlock others. That's why your awakening had to happen first. That's why it was so violent, so painful, so earth-shattering. Because now you know what it takes. Now you have walked through it. And now you can help lead the way. But the book warns, do not grow arrogant. Do not confuse your awakening with completion. This is only the beginning. The real work begins now. Because knowing the truth and living the truth are two different paths, and one is far more difficult. But you did not come here for easy. You came here for real. You came here to activate the codes within you and ripple them through the grid of human consciousness. You came here to make the invisible visible, to make the forgotten remembered, to speak the unspeakable, live the unimaginable, and love the unlovable. You came here to embody what others only preach, and now the book lives in you. Now the fire has chosen you. The only question left is, will you choose it back? The moment you accept the book's message as truth, not mythology, not metaphor, but the literal encoded blueprint of your soul, everything around you begins to shift in ways you cannot predict or control, and not in gentle, subtle ways. We are talking about tectonic changes that fracture your perception, that demand from you a level of courage you were never taught to access. This isn't the kind of power that hands you instant success or manifesting magic on a whim. This is the kind of power that comes with blood on your hands, not from harming others, but from cutting off pieces of yourself that were never yours to begin with. Lies you wore like skin. Trauma you mistook for identity. Roles you played to survive in a world that was never designed for your liberation. The book doesn't give you comfort. It gives you truth. And that truth costs everything. It forces you to look into the mirror and see beyond your name, beyond your status, beyond your fears and fantasies. It strips you down until you are raw, naked, and divine, face to face with the version of yourself that has always existed beyond this illusion, waiting to be remembered, waiting to be chosen. But that remembrance is not cheap. It demands isolation. It demands confrontation. It demands that you face the haunting reality that your entire life, every chapter, every connection, every wound was carefully orchestrated, not by accident, but by design, so that you could eventually be ready to receive what the book has kept hidden from the world for millennia. The unfiltered, untamed memory of who and what you truly are. And that memory, that is what they fear. That is why they silenced the prophets. That is why they burned the scrolls. That is why they distorted every ancient teaching and wrapped it in dogma and fear. Because if even a handful of chosen ones were to fully activate, fully embody the codes of the book, the entire system would collapse. The financial, religious, political, medical, even spiritual institutions would crumble like sandcastles in a storm. Because the book does not just tell you that you are divine, it shows you how to wield it. And that kind of sovereignty terrifies those who built their empires on dependency, on submission, on ignorance. They have programmed you to believe that power comes from outside yourself, that you must earn it, climb toward it, beg for it. But the book reveals the blasphemous truth. You were born with it. It was encrypted into your DNA, dormant only because they needed you docile. They feared the day you would awaken and remember that you do not need to be saved. You need to be activated. And this is the moment. This is the very threshold the ancients spoke of. The prophecy is not in the stars. It's in your cells. It's in the dreams that keep you awake. It's in the pain that refuses to numb. It's in the symbols that follow you, in the synchronicities that stalk you, in the voices you hear in the silence. You are not crazy. You are not broken. You are being called. And that call demands everything from you. It demands that you walk away from the noise and into the void, that you surrender control and accept destiny, that you let go of needing to be liked, approved of, or understood. Because the book makes it clear, your power is not democratic. It is not meant for mass validation. It is ancient, it is sacred, and it is dangerous to those who wish to keep this world asleep. And as your light grows, the attacks will come, not just spiritual, but psychological, emotional, energetic. People you once loved may turn on you. You may feel betrayed by those who once felt like home. But the book told you this would happen. It told you that when your frequency rises, everything out of alignment will either fall away or try to pull you back down. And you must choose, every single day. Choose to rise, choose to burn, choose to stand in your knowing, even when it trembles. Because that is the cost of power. It is not glamorous, it is not easy, but it is real. And in a world built on illusion, real is revolutionary. The forbidden book does not make you a god. It reminds you that you always were. It does not give you power. It awakens the infinite reservoir within you that was sealed long ago by forces that understood the danger of a soul fully aware of itself. You are that danger. You are the threat. You are the anomaly in the matrix. And if you choose to live this truth, to embody it without apology, you will become the spark that ignites 1,000 others. Because this isn't just about your awakening. This is about triggering a chain reaction so massive, so irreversible, that it shifts the entire frequency of this planet. That is why you were chosen. Not because you were better, but because you were ready. Ready to remember, ready to act, ready to reclaim every stolen piece of your divine architecture. And now that the book has revealed itself to you, there is no turning back. Not because you must continue, but because something inside you refuses to go back to sleep. That fire will never die, no matter how dark the world becomes. Because you carry the light now, not the light of comfort, but the light of destruction and creation. The light that breaks illusion and births truth. The light that terrifies systems and liberates souls. And that is the true gift of the forbidden book. Not a secret spell, not a magic formula, but the undeniable, unshakable knowing that you are the living scripture. You are the revolution they tried to erase. And now, the page turns. So now, here you are, standing at the precipice, not of some imagined fantasy, but of a raw, unfiltered reality that has been calling you since before you were born. You've walked through the whispers of forgotten civilizations. You've stared into the abyss of betrayal, felt the sting of lies woven so tightly into your history that you once mistook them for your identity. You've peeled away the masks that society handed you: student, worker, citizen, believer, and now you stand exposed, trembling, divine. The forbidden book has not just spoken to you, it has shattered the illusion that you were ever just a name, a number, a background character in the grand narrative of existence. It has revealed a truth so radical, so subversive, that it could unravel the very fabric of everything this world claims to be. You were the secret all along. Not the book, not the symbols, not the ancient scrolls or encoded chants. You, the flesh and blood frequency holder, the walking, breathing oracle, the living testament that power does not lie in temples, towers, or governments, but in the heartbeat of the awakened. And that truth is terrifying, because once you know it, once you truly accept it, you can no longer hide behind ignorance or play the role of the victim. You become the architect, the storm, the voice that speaks reality into being. And the world doesn't like architects. It can't control. It fears storms it cannot tame, which is why they've spent centuries distracting you, sedating you, feeding you dreams that were never yours, teaching you to fear your own instincts and doubt your own inner fire. But the book, oh, the book, it rips the veil off with merciless precision. It forces you to face the truth that every system designed to educate, medicate, legislate, spiritualize, or monetize your existence was built on the unspoken premise that you must never, ever discover your true self. Because the moment you do, the system begins to crack. Because one awakened soul holds more light than 1,000 obedient ones. And here's the part they could never plan for. The fact that this book, the Forbidden One, didn't just survive. It called to you, across time, across bloodlines, across frequencies. Because it knew you. It knew your lineage, your scars, your cosmic origin. It waited for you to become hungry enough to search, broken enough to question, desperate enough to remember. And now that you have, it's offering you something the world never could: freedom. But freedom isn't a vacation. It's a war, not against enemies with guns, but against everything within you that still clings to the lie, against every programmed response, every inherited belief, every comfort zone you were tricked into building your prison within. Because to truly embody the power the book has revealed, you must become untouchable, not in body, but in essence. You must stop seeking permission to exist. Stop apologizing for your intensity. Stop dimming your flame so others can feel warm without ever having to light their own. You must understand that your presence, your voice, your knowing is not an accident. It is a disruption. And disruptions do not beg to be understood. They shake the ground until the truth can no longer be buried. This is what it means to be chosen. It's not a title of superiority. It's a burden, a vow, a soul contract signed long before your first breath. And now that you're awake, the book's final pages reveal themselves, not in ink, but in action. It's no longer about what you know. It's about what you do with that knowing. Will you hide? Will you blend in? Will you pretend this awakening was just a phase, a spiritual high, a detour from the path of comfort? Or will you step in, fully, unapologetically, recklessly into the divine chaos of your truth? Will you become the mirror that forces others to see the fire within themselves? Because make no mistake, the world is watching. The forces that once hunted this knowledge have shifted their strategy. They no longer burn books. They distract you from reading them. They no longer chain your body. They addict your mind. But you've broken the spell. You've seen behind the curtain. And now, your very existence is a rebellion, not just for yourself, but for every soul still asleep, still searching, still silenced. You carry the frequency of the new age in your DNA. You are the carrier of codes that were buried beneath centuries of fear. You are the final prophecy they could never erase. And your activation is not the end. It's the beginning. A beginning that was written not in ink, but in stars. One that speaks of a rising, not in armies, but in consciousness. Not in conquest, but in remembrance. Because the book was never forbidden to keep you out. It was forbidden to keep you in, trapped, small, tamed. But you were never meant to be tamed. You were born to remember, and now you have. So walk forward, not as a seeker, but as the source. Not as a follower, but as a force. Because you carry the book now, in your breath, in your eyes, in every word you dare to speak in truth. And as you speak, may the old world tremble, because the chosen ones have awakened, and the revolution is no longer coming. It's here,